What's exciting about this exhibition is that it opens up a world that's been hidden to us in Australia and indeed all around the world, because it presents objects which tell us stories about how people lived in a part of the world which is still quite mysterious to us. In terms of Afghanistan's geographical position, what we see is a landscape which is quite harsh. It's filled with mountains, it's difficult to traverse, but people have been living in that geographical area from about 8,000 years before the Common Era. And what drew people to that location was largely permanent water and quite rich alluvial plains for growing crops. And by chance, those alluvial plains also contain very rich material, in particular gold and Lapis Lazuli. Indeed, some of the oldest mines in the world are in Afghanistan, and they are Lapis Lazuli mines. And so people went to that part of the world 8,000 years before the Common Era, settled there and began trading almost immediately across vast distances.
The Silk Roads existed, and they were the heart, they lay at the heart of early East-West conquest, eventually between China and Rome. Afghanistan actually got into the business very, very early, because high up in the mountains of Badakhshan, with very, very steep slopes, you have something that was treasured very much in the ancient world. This is the Lapis Lazuli mines. And there's really only one place in the ancient world that Lapis Lazuli came from. It's this beautiful, rich stone flecked with gold. It was very highly favoured by people in the ancient world. So by the Bronze Age, with the rise of the first civilizations, this material was being traded from these remote mountains in Badakhshan as far as Egypt and the rising power of the pharaohs in Egypt. It appears in Mesopotamia, in the royal burials there, the famous Queen Puabi, which is, she's at the British Museum, or her remains and her jewellery are at the British Museum, and you'll see bits of lapis there. So that contact began very, very early, and it was primarily a contact from reaching from Afghanistan to the west. And it was only later that the route through to the east went out. To understand why Afghanistan is so important is you have to understand the geography of the region. Immediately to the east, you have the Tibetan Plateau and the Himalayas. You don't walk across that very easily. So what do? You go north. And if you go north in order to go to the east, you hit the Taklamakan Desert, which is one of the worst howling deserts in the world. They talk about it as the desert you go into and don't come out of. So the trade route ran in a narrow band along the edge of the Tibetan Plateau and between the Tibetan Plateau and the Taklamakan Desert. And they came out in northern Afghanistan. So that was absolutely pivotal. And then if you want to get into India, of course everybody wants to get into India, because India has got precious stones, it's got emeralds, it's got rubies, it's got ivory, it's got all kinds of fine things, spices and fabrics and many, many rich things that the elites wanted. And primarily it was a trade, the Silk Road was a trade for elite goods. So you go south through Afghanistan, and it's the quickest route down to India. You cross into Pakistan across the Indus Valley, and you get into the Indian subcontinent. So precisely in northern Afghanistan is the point at which the road from India and the road from China meet. And then if you want to go to the west, how do you go? You can't go directly across Iran because it's mountains and deserts. You go along the northern part. You go along through northern Afghanistan, through Herat and into the northern part of what is now Iran, and then drop down through Iraq and along the Euphrates. So it's a northern route that has to come out along northern Afghanistan. So again, that's the only really efficient way. You can go a little bit further to north and south of the deserts, north of the mountains through Turkmenistan, but effectively it sits at absolutely the crossroads. And not only that, but it was very rich in itself. So it's not at all surprising. It's inevitable that it became the heart of this trading route.